and welcome to another episode of Murder Dictionary Podcast. My name is Brianna, and over there is Kelly.
Hey.
So before we get started, as always, we wanted to remind you of a few things to look out for. First of all, we have a few links in our show notes and description for every episode. So you will find in our description some timestamps anytime.
The Starlight Lounge presents An Evening with the Progressive Box.
Old moon, yeah. That's Hugo, tickling the ivories. He just saved by bundling home and auto with Progressive. Gonna finally buy a ring for that gal of yours, Hugo? Send her my condolences. Hi-oh! This next one's for you two. There's a burglar in my heart. Thank you.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Discounts not available in all states or situations.
Time that the story gets particularly gruesome or violent or gross, we will put timestamps in there so that if you don't want to hear that, you can skip through those.
Are there super thick?
There's also no warning for when it gets super thick. So just be on the lookout. Keep your vibes handy. So the next thing that's going to be in the show notes is links to research for tonight's episode. So any articles that we read or any documentaries that we watched, we will always link for you guys if you want to look into this story more. We also have links to our thread list, which is going to be threadlist.murderdictionary.com. The link's there. The link is also in our social media, and also our Patreon is going to be in there. So if you want merch, that's our thread list. And if you want to support the show with donations and some small merch items, we can do Patreon. So Patreon, you get stickers, condoms, bonus episodes, stuff like that. So we have a few new Patreon supporters this week. We wanted to say thank you to Fiona, Nicole, Jamie, Amanda, and Janelle.
Fiona, Nicole, Jaime, Amanda.
Jaleel White. He loves us.
Jaleel White, yes. Okay, cool.
So thanks, you guys, for your Patreon support. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, seriously, thank you.
And again, our link for Patreon is going to be on our social media and also in our description for episodes.
You guys should feel good because you keep us off the streets, right?
And polls.
And, well, keep you off the pole.
Speak for yourself.
I'm riding that North Pole right now.
Is that what it is?
It's so much fun.
Candy canes for days. So I think, let's see, lastly, if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We've got memes, updates for some of our past episodes, a lot of recommendations for various documentaries and TV shows and podcasts and stuff like that.
Just good conversation, usually.
Yeah.
I'm not always a part, but when I go on, which is at like 4 a.m.,
like
once in a while, once a month, when I'm like, hey, I should
up big.
Probably 92 fucking notifications. You know, honestly, I'm just overwhelmed. I can't. I don't know how you do it. You're so amazing.
I try and stay on top of it, but there's a lot. I mean, I get a lot of information off there.
Know.
There's a lot of people that are like, did you see this? Did you hear about that? I'm like, oh my God, I didn't until you told me.
And
Thank you.
Yeah, and you respond right away. And it says on Facebook.
I don't know what that says about me.
It's so good. I'm like, this bitch is at work. Like, what is she doing? Like,
don't tell my boss.
That's so cool.
No, I try and check it pretty often. So because there are people that, have specific questions or whatever, or reaction. I want to be responsive. I want to be available for that. But yeah, I try. So I think that's pretty much it. If you haven't subscribed on iTunes or left a review, we would also really appreciate that. And then we try and keep the intro pretty brief. So I think we could just get to our story.
U for university.
Exactly. So tonight we are going to be talking about Derrick Todd Lee.
Take me to college.
So firstly, I think I should probably say the connection to university is kind of thin on this one. I'm just gonna admit that. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that.
Did he walk by a university?
One time he glanced at a university, and I'm just running with that.
Did he fuck a girl at a university one time?
I think he fucked a co-ed once.
Okay.
Just the tip, but it still counts.
He bought a soda at a college one time.
So I know it's kind of thin. He wasn't specifically a co-ed killer only. You know, all his victims had different profiles. He happened to kill a couple students at a university and also in the area of Louisiana State University. So within certain neighborhoods that were really close to the school and also students that were there. But there were other victims that weren't.
So it wasn't just a school shooting like Lapine where he just came in
and targeted only exclusively students.
Okay.
So I do have to say that at the beginning just because, you know, just to be fair, it wasn't only university killings. However, I think the story is compelling enough to where I just felt like it had to be covered.
Okay. I guess. I mean, you get a pass. Sure, Brianna, do the story.
I mean, like, whatever.
I guess we have time.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of other aspects of the case that are very compelling to me that I feel like I really wanted to cover this. And I gravitate towards cases where they stay open for a little while, and specifically when they stay open due to racial issues. I'm like, I got to cover that case.
Yeah.
And this one was one where they definitely profiled Derrick as white. And that's one of the reasons that it contributed to him staying out on the streets longer. So.
Oh, okay. I was like, they profiled him as white. Now, how's that bad? Like,
they just kept telling him, you're white, man, you're white. He's like, man, I'm really not.
Like,
He's like, no, really, you're white. No, it was just, you know, for stereotypically, serial killers are single white men.
Okay.
And so they thought they were looking for a white man. And Derrick continued to kill many more people because they were looking for a white man, despite other people saying that he was black. So
I'm surprised because usually they're like, oh, white man, like they just don't look for a white man, right? Like I think
well,
it's always like
I mean, for
opposite,
me, this
you know
is
what
the
I mean?
issue. It's racial profiling in certain crimes.
Okay.
So they look for black men in specific crimes. If something's gang related or
Yeah.
drug related or whatever, or if they
That's
just
what I
want to
meant.
pull someone over on the fucking street,
Yeah.
they look for black men.
Black men, yeah, not that's why you were like profiled
And
as
when
white.
you're profiling a serial killer, a lot of detectives and FBI and whoever just based on statistics say that it's got to be a single white male.
Okay.
However, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
And so in this case, it prevented him from being caught. Yeah.
It is the case a lot, right? So it's
Yeah.
understandable why they
Oh,
would
yeah,
think
I
that, but not all
understand
the time.
statistically why they would be looking for that. But in the face of his criminal history and in the face of a witness,
Yeah.
a victim saying, hey, this man is black that
Yeah.
attacked me,
And they're like,
then I don't understand.
No, you mean white. You're in shock. You
Are
are
you
in
sure?
shock.
So-
how likely are they to profile a white 28-year-old woman from Van Nuys possibly looking to exact revenge on some exes or something? I don't know. What?
Well, have they looked at your internet search history? Are you stalking anyone?
I look like a gay man on my internet history. It's just
Perfect.
barebacking all day.
So I don't know. I know that the connection to universities is a little bit thin, but I do really want to cover this case, and it hasn't been talked about a lot. So I feel like I just wanted to cover it. Are we cool with that?
We're cool. Tell me about the profiling.
So Derrick Todd Lee was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana on November 6, 1968, to parents Samuel and Florence Lee. His father struggled with mental illness and was violent towards his family. He was abusive to Florence, his wife, and also the kids. He abandoned the family when Derrick was still very young, but Samuel and Florence were kind of on again, off again for a while after he left the family. So even though he moved out, it seemed like they were still dating.
That's having your cake and eating it too,
And
right?
fucking it too.
And fucking it too.
Yeah. So he kept coming back. And of course, they would have good times and bad times, same as their relationship. So he would come back and sometimes it would be good and sometimes the abuse would continue.
Doesn't affect the kid at all, right?
Oh, not at
No.
all. He grew up to be really healthy. Eventually, Samuel abandoned his family and then came back and had a particularly violent episode where he attempted to murder Florence, and he was put into a mental institution. Once she was on her own, Florence tried to provide for her kids, but it was a struggle for her to make it as a single mom until she met and married Coleman Barrow. Coleman really cared about his stepkids, which is surprising.
Mm-hmm.
And by all accounts, he really did raise them as though they were his own. There was really nobody saying that he was a bad stepdad or anything. The kids were so young when he came into the picture that he just took them in and raised them as his own kids.
Mm.
So together, Florence and Coleman taught the kids about education and how important it was to be educated and do well in school, and also instilled a lot of religious values in them. Derrick's sister, she did well in school, and she became the favorite because she did really well in school. But Derrick, on the other hand, he really struggled to keep up with his studies.
I bet you he was the cool one, though.
Maybe.
Probably. It always works like that.
But the problem was that, so Derrick had an IQ of 65.
Oh, he's definitely the cool one.
So anything under 70 would be considered intellectually disabled. So he really couldn't keep up with his studies. He couldn't get grades the way that his sister was. And so his parents were always on him about not doing well in school. But the reality was, it really wasn't his fault. He just was of a certain IQ where he couldn't really do well in school.
Didn't they just put you in football?
Well,
I think, and then you get a scholarship,
right?
and then you don't actually
Go hit some things.
Yeah. Be good at physical stuff.
Yeah, it was impossible for him to live up to their standards,
Yeah.
And so his grades were declining. He wasn't able to do schoolwork, and he had a lot of trouble. But the area that he did excel in, he didn't do sports, but instead he was really creative and artistic. So he got into music and joined the school band.
Did he play trombone?
We can only hope. I actually don't know which instrument he played.
So it's not the French horn. We're good.
Yeah, fuck the French horn.
Yeah, fuck the French horn.
What's your problem with the French horn, man?
It's like really irritating, and we have other horns. Like there's just better horns, and it only comes out at like Christmas time.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Huh. I can't even think of what a French horn sounds like, but I'm going to think of the most annoying noise. Oh, that.
I just drooled everywhere.
Now I know what a French horn is.
That's kind of how. It's kind of like a regular trumpet, but
annoying.
annoying. Yeah.
Got it. Around this time that he was getting into music and being a young musician, he also began torturing stray animals. So even though he had this other hobby and outlet for some of his extra energy, he still had a bit more, and he was like going around finding various mischief to get into. And the thing that he gravitated towards was picking on animals.
And was he creative about it?
I don't know, and I don't want to know.
Because there's that one. What's that one 40-year-old virgin guy? What am I thinking his name?
Steve Carell.
Steve Carell. And he had those like fucking little rats that he would make like little.
Oh,
do you remember that? I mean, I guess it's not torturing animals, but that's creative.
They were already gone, so he could just taxidermy them.
Oh, that's true. I guess that is
that's
taxidermy.
the only thing.
Okay, so torturing them is where we draw.
I'm not necessarily into it, but he's not killing them, which
Okay.
makes me feel like he's not going to murder me.
So if he would have just done taxidermy, he could have had that creative outlet.
He really needed you to
I know.
steer him in the right direction.
Murder whisperer. Whisper.
You're like a murder life coach.
Don't let him find the body.
Good advice, life coach.
Wear those gloves.
Oh man, I almost forgot my gloves. Thanks, life coach.
Don't leave that wrench there.
Of course not, life coach. That's my favorite murder wrench. So around the time that he began picking on stray animals, he also became a peeping Tom. So a lot of extra time on his hands. So as early as age 11, he began creeping around the neighborhood and looking into windows of neighborhood girls.
What's the difference between voyeurism and peeping Tomism?
I was looking into the terminology of this and California laws and shit. Just because I like to party.
Outside my window at 2 a.m.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that they're just interchangeable words. Voyeurism seems to be the umbrella term for stalking and peeping and any looking into the window of anybody or looking into any private space as opposed to public space. Okay. So voyeurism encompasses all of that. Like anytime you're peering into any private location, then you are a voyeur.
Okay.
In the eyes of the law.
And porn.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I guess Peeping Tom. I just don't like the word peeping.
I know I don't like it either, but it's
Peeping.
going to be a lot in this episode.
Oh, fuck.
Brace your ass. So his voyeuristic tendencies escalated in his teens, and he began actually going inside houses instead of just looking in from the outside.
Like he put like 1 foot in, and then he put his 1 foot out, and then he
One
put his
foot
foot in, and he
in,
shook
and
it all
then
about. He
Shook
did
my
the
dick
hokey,
about.
did the pokey pokey, maybe?
The pee-pee pokey. Yeah, he was just, I don't know. It's just every few years it would escalate. He would just kind of get brave and go one extra step.
Oh,
So
no.
first it was just looking in, then it was going in and basically kind of walking around, not taking anything, not moving anything, but just having that knowledge that he could get away with it, you know? And that he was in someone's private space without their permission, you know?
And it's kind of fun. I do that in my parents' room or like my sister's room. I'd be like, oh shit, they're not home. Let me go see what I can find. And then you go farther and then you open a drawer and then you're like, all right, I gotta put everything back.
Too much.
Yeah, and then you run back. And then next time you escalate, right? Then you steal some cigarettes. Then you use their makeup. Then you steal $100. But this is real life shit.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Huh.
Took $100 from my sister one time.
Really?
She said I could just ask for it.
So she knew about it after the fact, and
Oh,
she was
yeah.
like, you could have just asked?
Yeah.
Damn.
Escalation.
After he started going inside houses, that also escalated, and he began taking things from the house. And it was kind of that criminal, like taking a memento or a little keepsake, something that meant something to him, something insignificant, nothing valuable. So it was just little trinkets, random things on shelves. But eventually that escalated too, and he began stealing valuables. By 13, he was arrested for burglary for the first time. At 16, he got in a fight at school and he pulled a knife on the other boy during the fight. He was charged with attempted second-degree murder, but he never did any time for it. Just a slap on the wrist. At 17, he's arrested again, and this time it was for being a peeping Tom. Your favorite word.
More? Did he get more than a slap on the wrist?
No.
Okay.
That's going to be a recurring theme too.
Okay. So he just is.
Getting away with things left and right.
Oh man, it's good to be under 18.
Yeah, right.
Honestly.
So by the end of high school, he had charges for burglary, assault, and voyeurism. He was repeatedly caught by police, and he had a record, but he was never put in juvie, never did any time. So the cops and the judges basically felt kind of sorry for him, and they thought of him as like a harmless nuisance. Again, kind of because of his intellectual disability.
So
Not that anybody knew his IQ score, but it was
Yeah.
apparent enough to people. They just thought he was kind of slow, but he wasn't really a danger to anybody.
that's called enabling. They should
Oh,
have
yeah.
sent him in there. He could have gotten his ass beat for taking somebody's shits, their Doritos, or peeping at the wrong person, and he would have gotten his ass beat and he would have learned.
Maybe.
No, probably not. But at least he still.
I don't know. I
gotten-
think he had the type of compulsion that no matter what, he
Yeah.
would kept going. So in 1988, when Derrick was 20 years old, he met and married Jacqueline Denise Sims. They had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, a son named Derrick, and their daughter was named Doris.
he's a junior.
Yes.
Derrick Jr.?
And he would later have another child with a girlfriend that was named Dedrick.
Stupid.
He's basically the Kris Jenner of murderers.
That's my sister has a sister. My sister's name is Rachel.
Yes.
Had another sister named Rochelle. I was like, stupid.
What?
Yeah.
That's too close.
Dumb. Yeah.
That's way too close. That's weird.
Yeah, well, it
Who
was in
does
different
that?
states. Yeah. But
Was she a Rachel Jr. and then it was Rachel Jr. and Rochelle?
I
or what?
wish that would have been better. I think he just really liked my sister and he needed another one in like a different state.
You're like,
so.
I just want another one of you.
Yeah.
You're the best. That's creepy.
It is creepy, right?
Yeah,
Or
for
just
sure
not-
creepy.
No imagination.
So unfortunately, he supported his growing family by being a petty criminal instead of getting a real job. He did a lot of B&Es, and if the person was home, he would assault them. But that seemed to be secondary to just basically being inside the house.
Okay.
That was the main goal. It seemed like violence was not as much his thing as was the getting away with doing something wrong, if that makes sense, you know?
I mean, he's trying to support his family, right?
Oh, okay.
Where does that fall in between assault
You are forgiven.
and peeping?
Right. So soon after the marriage and the kids, Lee caught a case and he pled guilty to a burglary charge. He still didn't serve any serious jail time, even though he's being caught right and left.
He's over 18 now.
Right?
Okay.
Well over. He's in his early 20s, but still he's kind of seen as this, you know, harmless nuisance.
Sorry, just plain dumb is the way I'm just gonna...
I like you making faces on our podcast.
Just let me get this right. I don't...
So, in 1992, he broke into the home of Robert Banga. Nothing was taken from the home, but Robert had 2 daughters. So it is believed that he was most likely there just to creep in the house, maybe go through their stuff, maybe take something like a trinket, or surprise one of the daughters and attack her. Just in hindsight, it seems like that must have been the case, you know. In 1993, 15-year-old Michelle Chapman and her boyfriend were parked by a cemetery, kind of doing some lover's lane shit in a cemetery, as one does, when Derrick walked up to the car. He pulled out a machete and he slashed and stabbed at them. But a police officer was on patrol in the area and he stumbled upon the scene, saw the attack, ran up, and Derrick fled in the middle of attacking them. Both teens were severely injured, but they both survived.
Just peep. You don't have to machete.
Just look in the car window.
Yeah,
you don't have to bring a machete into this, man.
Yeah, watch me. I'll watch you back. I don't...
Watch me and I'll watch you back. That's how it goes, right?
Yep. Like, fuck, a machete. That's a whole nother thing, too.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I guess it's like equivalent to if somebody came after me, like garden shears.
Right. You brought a machete to a tongue fight, man. So Michelle Chapman says that she looked her attacker right in the eye. She said, quote, "The one thing I remember were his eyes because they were big and bloodshot and full of rage. I tried to turn the keys, but he took the keys with him." Many years later, after the statute of limitations had unfortunately already passed, Michelle positively ID'd Derrick as her attacker, but no charges could be filed because it had been so long.
Wait, did they run into each other on the streets or something? Or
once he was caught for other attacks, she ID'd him, basically. It was too late, though. So during the attack, Michelle's right foot was almost completely severed. My tummy is turning real hard.
Almost severed.
Yeah. Derrick, as he was running away from the scene, dropped the machete, but there was rainwater that destroyed any evidence that could have linked him to the crime. So really, it's basically her eyewitness account, or the account of the victim, I should say.
Oh, yeah. So just him running away with a machete and dropping it isn't enough. Well, it's just her.
Well, the thing is they couldn't link it to him because it was far enough away to where she didn't see him drop it. But any fingerprints or blood or anything like that, it just was gone.
It almost seems too easy to get away with things.
Right. Sometimes going through these, I'm like, really?
The rainwater is what did it.
Get away with anything.
So just rinse everything.
Just kill everyone in Seattle or something.
Yeah.
You're like, what the fuck?
Never do it in a bathroom. Always do it in Seattle. Never a bathroom.
The murder life coach. Words of wisdom. So Michelle says that the scars she has are a constant reminder of the attack. In 1993, Derrick and a friend broke into the home of 73-year-old man named Melvin Forrester. I like that name. They beat Melvin severely and they robbed him. And I think the presence of another person made it more aimed toward the robbery end of things. Mm-hmm. Again, his thing was definitely the peeping. So this time, Derrick went to prison for a year.
Woohoo!
But a year seems pretty light based on the fact that he's a repeat offender.
Yeah.
You know, that's a little bit crazy to me. But whatevs. I'm not a judge yet.
Yeah. Whew, thank goodness.
When he got out, he tried to clean up a bit and, you know, quote, go straight, as they say. And he worked construction by day. He spent time with his family on the weekends. He really tried to, like, clean up his act a bit. And although he briefly left behind his criminal activities, he began drinking heavily. So he just straight up replaced that shit.
I like that he's like building homes that he could later peep into. Right. He knows exactly the floor
I know
plans.
Exactly.
Has a room right here, 2-bedroom. That's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, upper windows.
Fuck. So after work, he would hang out in seedy bars and he would try and pick up women. That became his new thing.
It's our regular Monday nights, right?
Right? That's us, creeping. Usually he was unsuccessful because he made women pretty uncomfortable. He had very poor social skills. He was pretty awkward, and not in that endearing way like you and me. They're like, oh, cute, she's a T-Rex. So one source even says that he would try and kind of dress up fancy when he would go out and pick women. And to him, what that meant was dressing up as a cowboy.
Of course.
So picture this stocky black man in a cowboy hat and boots and fringe.
Oh, does he have chaps? Come on.
Oh, man, I hope so. I sure fucking hope so.
That is dressing up. Honestly, I can't argue it.
Yeah, fancy times. I get it. You go, Derrick.
America.
So although he was usually unsuccessful, it seems that he was successful, at least by the sheer numbers game. Like he was trying so much that he was at least getting a little bit.
1 out of 10 women love cowboys. We'll fuck a cowboy for sure.
1 out of 100 women might say yes. Yeah. You know, like he was just going off stats, I think.
Ooh, drunk cowboy too at a bar?
Right?
Oh, man.
So it seems he had a few girlfriends at least and a bunch of one-night stands because he was just always out there trying to play the field. Although his wife, Jacqueline, knew that he wasn't faithful, she still stuck by him.
What?
Yeah, I know.
You got a drunk cowboy. Get the fuck out of here. Just what?
I know. So I think partially it was just to keep the family together once the kids were in the picture, whatever. And also I think she was afraid of him. You know, I think that they were fighting. There was probably some physical stuff going on.
Probably lassoing her, you know, just get over here like a little baby calf.
Hog tying her and stuff. Yeah, it was probably more than what we know, you know.
Totally.
Eventually it would escalate, but at this point I think when it first started, she just thought it would get better, you know, the same way that he got a real job. Maybe he would just grow out of this kind of womanizing phase or something. I don't know.
We do that a lot, right? Women just are like, no, he'll change.
He'll get better. It's okay. He'll turn over a new leaf. Yeah.
No, that's just him.
Yeah, I think everyone's done that.
It's only happened once.
You know?
And
yeah,
he was,
but
like,
particular
really drunk.
women.
Yeah. It wasn't his fault. He was drunk.
Yeah, blame it on the alcohol when all else fails. So Derrick had one main girlfriend, though, that was long-term, named Cassandra Green. And that's the one that he eventually had a child with, named Derrick. In 1996, his wife Jacqueline's father died in an accident at work. It was like a factory or plant explosion, and her father died. And so she inherited $250,000 in insurance money in the fucking 90s. So they were rolling in it.
Yes.
And instead of saving it or spending it on the family, getting a house, something responsible like that, Derrick began using her money to buy new clothes. He got a whole new wardrobe, bunch of cowboy shit, and spent a lot of money on his girlfriend, taking her out all the time, buying her gifts, etc.
Oh, man.
I know. Yeah. If I was forgiving before, that's where that fucking forgiveness would stop.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
IOUs for some chaps or
Right?
for a new hat, like
Or for that other broad's jewelry. Like,
Yeah.
I'm putting my foot down on that one.
Why the fuck did he have access to it? I'm mad.
I know. But that's what makes me think that there was probably a lot of violence going on before. I don't know. I think that their relationship was super tumultuous and she was probably afraid of him. I think.
I want to be a divorce lawyer, and then it's gonna like my slogan will be like, "Keep your shit when things go wrong."
I'd respond to that busman, Chad.
Yeah.
I definitely would.
Totally. That is someone I trust.
So people say he blew through the $250,000 pretty quickly. And it's not like his wife was spending a bunch of money. It was just all his stuff.
He just bought a ranch, and he could have just lived out that cowboy lifestyle.
Yes. Get some cattle, something. Go feed some shit in a field.
Yeah.
So even though he had 2 families to keep him busy, he was still a peeping Tom in his spare time. He never gave that up. Around this time, in like the late 90s, his peeping Tom activities escalated to full-on stalking. He began learning women's habits and schedules, watching them in their houses, and following them around. In early 1998, he began stalking a 28-year-old woman named Randy Merrier, a divorced mother of a 3-year-old son. On April 18th, 1998, Randy's 3-year-old son walked to a neighbor's house by himself, and he asked the neighbor if he could play. He comes over, he's like, I want to play, whatever. The neighbor asks, of course, where's your mom?
Whose fucking baby are you?
I think she was familiar enough with the baby that she knew where to go.
Where are your owners?
Right. Why are you off leash? So the neighbor takes the baby back to the baby's house to see why he's out running by himself. And when they get to the home, they discover a bloody scene.
Oh, shit.
And signs of a violent struggle. The neighbor immediately calls police, reports the incident, and says that the mother, Randy, is nowhere to be found. There's blood stains that indicate Randy has been dragged across the floor and out of the house. And her contacts are found on the floor, side by side, in a pool of blood, indicating that she was hit from the back of the head with such force that her contacts flew out of her eyes and landed next to each other.
That's not funny. I can't. I'm so uncomfortable right now.
I know.
What do you mean? Like they just fell? No, I get it.
Yeah.
But is that scientifically possible?
Honestly never heard of it happening in a case.
Never heard of that.
But it's a fact that really
is fucked
cuts to the core of me. I just can't believe that.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Contact, like your contact, they're sticky. I mean, you've worn contacts, right? They stick to your fucking, whew, that's some force. That sucks.
I know. I feel so awful.
Oh, man.
So days went by, weeks went by, months went by. Randy's body was never found.
No way.
Yeah. There was DNA left at the scene, but it didn't match anybody in the police database. And at that time, Derrick had never been given like a heavy enough sentencing to require him to register his DNA. So he wasn't in the system. Much later, of course, after the fact, his DNA would be linked to this scene. So we know it was definitely a murder committed by Derrick. But at the time, all they had was DNA that didn't match anybody. So a couple years pass, and in June 1999, Derrick attacks a 36-year-old woman named Colette Walker in her home. Derrick follows her to her house, forces his way into her home. At the doorway, they kind of have a struggle, and he tries to convince her that they should date each other. Colette says, of course, her response, I don't even know you. What the fuck are you doing in my house, basically? And she manages to kind of talk him down and try and get him to leave. He insists that she take his phone number and call him, and that's how she gets him to eventually leave the house. So she takes his number, says, yeah, no problem, okay, I'll call you, whatever, and he leaves. But a couple days later, Colette's neighbor asks about her new boyfriend. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And the neighbor says, I saw someone inside your house. Who I'm talking about, the man who's been inside your house.
No, stop.
Yes.
Stop. Oh my God.
Yeah, chills for sure.
Chills.
But chills.
Run.
Yeah. So she informs the neighbor, if you see him again, call the cops. That's not my boyfriend. He's stalking me and I have nothing to do with him, definitely call the cops. So after learning that fact that he's been in her house, Colette then files stalking charges against Derrick. A few days after the charges are filed, Colette catches him peering into her window watching her. So she will end up calling the police 5 more times to report him around her house. And he's arrested in August for stalking.
She should have hammer smashed face, dude. I just would be ready to go, right? Wouldn't you?
I would have all the weapons.
Holy shit.
I would just turn into a prepper overnight. And the thing is that between, the first incident happens in like June, then by August he's arrested. There's 3 months where it's just this guy is stalking her. And he's already had, the audacity to like try and barge into your front door. What is he capable of? That's fucking terrifying.
This is why we need I'm not opposed to a moat.
And crocodiles, the moat crocodile, the home security system.
Piranhas.
Oh, yeah.
Acid.
I'm all for that.
Bats. I don't know. Birds that swoop in. I don't know, dude. Tigers when you get there, too.
Lions, tigers, and bears. I'm all for all of that.
Koala bears.
If you're a woman, you should have some scary-ass animals protecting you at all times.
Yeah.
I would have some bats on little strings just like flying around my head just to, scare people off.
Like fire ants around my bush.
Yes. Absolutely.
You remember, did you ever see the Imagination Land on South Park where it's like cute little animals and they like entice people with the cuteness and then they just rape them and they fucking kill them and murder them?
It would be like the opposite of that. It would just be scaring everyone away.
No, it would just be killing, raping, and murdering my assailants. Duh.
So in a plea bargain, Derrick pled guilty and he received probation with a suspended sentence.
I'm done. I quit, dude.
I know.
I quit. Fuck this guy.
Yeah. So much.
I still can't get the contacts out of my head. Like I can see the picture of it in my head.
Of all the things in this case, that sticks with me the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because how I was thinking like it's sticky. Maybe they stuck to the ground. They was hitting her so hard that her eyeballs were touching the ground.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just overthinking
It's just visceral.
Yeah.
It's a very, intense fact. So after he receives probation, Colette, of course, keeps fighting, but the cops don't listen. They don't draw a connection from this incident to other attacks on women. They think it's an isolated thing. And against the direction of the courts, Derrick again went snooping around Colette's house. The neighbors saw him. He just kept doing it. But Colette decided that since the police and the justice system would not help her, she would move. So eventually she leaves and that stalking obsession is over because she took herself out of this situation, I can't even imagine. Like nobody's helping her and just months and months are going by and he's still on the street.
Wow, we need vigilante justice.
Right?
Seriously.
And moats. By 1999, the money from his father-in-law had ran out and Lee was back to living off his construction job. It was really hard to make ends meet working a straight job, and it was even harder now that he had 3 kids. So Derrick and his girlfriend Cassandra started fighting a lot about money. In February of 2000, the fighting escalated to getting physical, and Cassandra got a protective order prohibiting Derrick from getting near her. 3 days after the protection order goes into effect, Cassandra and Derrick had a huge fight in the parking lot of a bar. So there's conflicting accounts about it. So either he went looking for her and found her in the bar, or they were together at the bar and she caught him talking to another woman. I found sources saying 2 different stories. But either way, once they were fighting in the bar together, they started having a yelling match, and that turned into a physical fight. It spilled into the parking lot, and then onlookers called the police.
Mhm.
When the police arrived, of course, Derrick is on probation, a constant criminal. They know him, so he flees the scene, not wanting to get caught. As he's fleeing, he attempts to run over the cops with his car. So Cassandra presses charges, and his probation is revoked. He's sentenced to 2 years, but he serves, of course, a fraction of that time. And he spent, about a year in prison and is released in 2001.
I feel like he's the child of royalty.
Right?
He's like a fucking Hilton. He just gets out of everything.
Everything. Yeah, just over and over. That's just one of the things that I'm like, okay, I have to do this story. It's just so much that he gets away with. And everyone just kind of brushes it off like it's nothing. So he was, of course, slapped on the wrist and given house arrest. So he was required to wear monitoring equipment. But in May, he was found guilty of violating the terms of his parole by removing his ankle bracelet. And instead of having his probation revoked, he was just kind of given another slap on the hand and not returned to prison.
No, what the fuck is the point of a bracelet then?
Yes.
Like, what's the point?
Decoration.
Ugh.
Accessorizing.
Doesn't go with the whole cowboy theme.
I can't get my boots on. So, yeah, he just is constantly released and then allowed to be back on the street where he can harm women. It's so fucking awful. So in September, he's arrested again for battery against his wife, but she drops the charges. So days after the charges against him are dropped by his wife, Derrick commits another murder. In early September 2001, 41-year-old Gina Wilson Green, a nurse and office manager, began feeling kind of like she was being watched. It was nothing concrete, but she just had this odd feeling. You've had that feeling, right? Yeah. It just happens. You're just like, oh, someone's watching me. So she felt like she must be the target of a peeping Tom. And inside her home, she felt someone was looking in the windows, but she never could catch anybody. And she, of course, lived in the same neighborhood as Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge. So even though she didn't catch anybody, she still had that feeling, so much so that she actually told a friend and her mother that she thought someone was stalking her. She didn't know who it was, but a couple weeks later, on September 24th, 2001, Gina was found murdered in her home. And of course, her mom and her friend told the police that she had this feeling. And again, there was nothing that could be linked to him except for this kind of MO that he had been stalking people.
Peeping.
Yeah.
Imagine if you were the person to have told her, like, you're just tripping. Like, you're just
Right?
crazy. Like, you're
Imagine
freaking
if you
out.
were the friend just minimizing that.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. By all accounts, they took her seriously and they felt really bad, but I don't know. So during the attack, Derrick took her purse and her keys, but he left everything else, which would end up being a pattern. I don't know if you remember, but he took the keys from the machete incident. Mm-hmm. He would end up doing that at a few other scenes. A lot of times he wouldn't take valuables, just keys or purse or cell phones, stuff like that.
Sorry. Is there like a reason, or like it
I
didn't
don't
matter
know.
the things,
I think
or just smaller things, or he liked
a lot of serial killers have that one thing that they attach to where it's just like, oh, I just take keys, or
panties.
I just take panties, something like that. And it seemed to be his thing.
Okay.
I don't know. There's no real good explanation for it, but it is a pattern. So there were no signs of forced entry, and he was usually able to kind of talk his way into a woman's home. And I think also probably he would follow them and kind of force his way in, like he did with the one lady, where he just talked to them and said, oh, I want to date you, that kind of stuff. And I think he would just kind of use his arm and kind of open the door once they were at the door. That's my theory.
Yeah.
Because there's really no good explanation of how he was able to just get into these houses. So there were probably people that he would say, I need to use your phone, stuff like that, or ask about a neighbor or say he was lost. But there were probably times that he approached him like that one woman and said he was interested, you know? So it was pretty common that there were no broken windows, no locks that were fucked up, anything like that. But there was an urban legend that he would use a taped recording of a baby crying to try and convince women to let them into their home. There was no concrete evidence of this. And the Baton Rouge police were quick to deny that they ever said anything about that. They said that the rumor wasn't coming from their office, but unfortunately the rumor was kind of perpetuated and word of mouth kind of spread it around. This theory was also present in 2 Criminal Minds episodes.
Nah.
Where they said, you know, like, oh, this killer used a crying baby recording and blah, blah, blah. But really, there's no evidence that that really happened.
There's those people that leave the strollers next to the side of the freeway.
Right.
To get you to stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's similar to that. Like, and there was also this chain email that went around that time that the killings were going on, warning people not to stop for things like that, strollers or baby crying or shit like that, because they could be victims of this. I don't know. It was kind of weird. I feel like the implication is only women will help babies or something, you know?
Yeah, I would lock my door if I
or
heard
that we need
crying.
to stop helping people.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe they just don't know us.
Yeah,
like we respond differently to babies.
Somebody shut that baby up. Get it some milk or.
I'm trying to watch Riverdale. Be quiet.
Brianna, can you turn it up, please? Put it at 72.
So I don't know. There's just no basis for this, but it was a rumor that was going around. It was definitely an urban legend.
I wonder how you get guys. Like, what tape recording do you press for guys? Is it like to help?
Just like asses slapping together,
yeah, like football, like woo, like you know, just woo, what to do?
Football or like clapping of twerk videos,
yes,
stuff like that. A pizza slice being pulled from the box.
The opening of a lesbian scene. Oh my god, my top
Let's have a pillow fight.
Oops, I dripped
Let
water.
me braid your hair.
Not that hair. I don't know how to kiss. Can you teach me? 10 dudes run out of the house.
Right?
Oh, man.
Straight into machetes. So I don't know. It's safe to say that he kind of took advantage of people's goodwill or politeness or that kind of urge to just say, okay, I'll help you and whatnot. But definitely the crying baby thing wasn't true. So on January 14th, 2002, a 21-year-old Louisiana State University student named Geraldine DeSoto registered for grad school. She left the campus in the morning after registration and she headed home, where Derrick was there and he attacked her. Her husband arrived home to find Geraldine beaten and stabbed to death. One thing that made this particular attack unique was that there was no signs of sexual assault. He left his DNA at almost every murder scene except for this one. And originally, Geraldine's husband was suspected as the murderer. He was the primary suspect, but there was DNA found at the scene, like under her fingernails and stuff like that, that didn't match the husband, so he was cleared. A few months passed, and a 21-year-old Louisiana State University student named Charlotte Murray Pace moved into the same neighborhood where Gina Wilson Green was murdered. She was the one that felt like she was being watched. Mm-hmm. And Charlotte was extremely ambitious and driven, an amazing student, excelled in all her classes. She was about to become the youngest student at Louisiana State in the history to receive her master's degree in business administration. On May 31st, 2002, just 2 days after moving into her new neighborhood, Charlotte was found by her roommate in a pool of blood in her townhouse. There were, again, no sign of forced entry. Her keys and cell phone were taken. The crime scene showed that she had put up a really vicious fight against her attacker. The murder for this one was particularly brutal. She was bludgeoned with a clothing iron and stabbed 81 times with a screwdriver. The last injury was a stab wound with a screwdriver that went into her eyeball and through her brain.
Whoa, dude.
Yeah.
From Peeping, like, I get that, okay, it escalated with the violence and stuff like that, but he really was a Peeping Tom that didn't... 81 times? That's a lot. That's
a hell of an escalation, man.
Like, an extreme escalation.
Yeah. So that's why, I mean, it's clear that all the times that he's breaking in and stuff, I mean, it's just not about money. It's not about, it's just about these women, you know, it's just about the attacks or feeling like he's getting away with violating them in some way, you know?
Yeah.
So DNA evidence at the scene matched him later on, of course, but again, his DNA was not in the system. However, it did match the DNA that was left at the Gina Green crime scene. So at this point, they knew that even though they didn't know who the attacker was, they knew that they had a serial attacker.
It was the same person, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once they knew that it was the same perpetrator, they began operating, of course, under that notion that it was a serial murder. And they began to start trying to develop a profile of who this killer was. But, of course, they had difficulty developing a profile. The investigation was plagued with inaccurate eyewitness accounts and wrong assumptions, like I discussed earlier, made by the detectives. The first assumption was, of course, that the serial killer statistically had to be a single white male.
Sucks.
This theory was further perpetrated by the assumption that a serial murderer will kill within their own community. So they were thinking that at this point, since the victims were white females, they had to have a white male that was a serial killer. So the working theory, of course, was this was a single white male who drove a white pickup truck based on an eyewitness account. Someone had seen a white pickup truck driven by a white man with a naked woman slumped over in the passenger seat. And it was assumed that this person that witness had seen would have to be the serial killer. For a long time, that was all they were looking for. White male, white pickup.
It's a college town, right? I don't think...
You know, there's a lot of slumped over females, I'm just saying. So it's not narrowing it down.
She's been wasted. Maybe she had a tube top on.
It's true. That's
You
honestly the
fucking
first
don't
thing
know.
I thought was, yeah, it's got to be a tube top.
Yeah. She's sleepy and tube topping it.
So, of course, none of this matched Derrick. No white pickup, and of course, he was black. So also, a few local police departments didn't communicate with each other, with the surrounding area police departments. So they didn't link multiple attacks and Peeping Tom incidents and all these burglaries to one person. They thought that they just had 2 murders with the DNA that linked, and that was it. So they really didn't have the ability to narrow in on Derrick because they didn't link all the other crimes. This was, of course, further complicated by the fact that Derrick used a lot of different methods, did a lot of different crimes, and used murder weapons that were just available right there in the moment, instead of sticking to one MO. So a lot of times they will link killers to their crimes just by saying, okay, all these women were stabbed.
Yeah.
Okay, all these women were shot. And then that's a lot of times the best way for them to link crimes together. And since he was all over the place, they didn't really put all of his string of crimes together.
Yeah, it is kind of hard to link a little bit. You know?
Yeah, because he was doing a bunch of different things. On July 9th, 2002, Derrick struck again about 70 miles west of Baton Rouge. And I think that he was kind of seeing, now that he's done a couple murders, he kind of needed to move to a different area. Again, another tactic to not get the crimes linked together.
For an IQ of 65.
That's what a lot of the detectives said. They were like, his crimes were very methodical, well planned out, and very intelligent, just based on the kind of time and planning that he put into them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So on July 9th, 2002, Derrick attacked Diane Alexander. She was getting ready for work when Derrick knocked on the door. He introduced himself as Anthony, and he said he was looking for the home of the Montgomerys and said, "They're neighbors of yours. I'm looking for their house." She said she didn't know who the Montgomerys were. So Derrick asked her if her husband possibly knew. And Diane said, "My husband's not home."
Oh, man.
So Derrick's demeanor changed immediately, she said. Once he knew that she was alone, he forced his way into the home. He, used his arm just like open the door and overpowered her. He told her not to try and fight back because he had a knife and he would poke her in the eye.
He's not lying.
Right? So he attempted to sexually assault her, but he couldn't stay hard, which is an appropriate reaction for a dick to have in this scenario. He became frustrated and he began bludgeoning her.
Oh, no. Oh, my God. That would be
Because it's always the woman's fault that your dick doesn't work, right?
Oh, but that's not the last thing I want to see before I die. He's just trying to furiously jack his eye. Hold on. Give me a second.
God.
Give me a second. Okay, wait. Okay. Now lean that way. Okay, now.
I fucking hate this guy.
Oh, my goodness.
So he then grabbed the telephone cord that was plugged into their computer for dial-up, and he began...
Sorry, that's not my dial-up.
He began strangling her with the cord. She was badly beaten and sexually assaulted, but her teenage son, Herman, arrived home in the middle of the attack, and Derrick was startled and fled the scene.
That's fucked.
I can't even imagine the son coming home to that.
Mm-mm.
That's just got to scar you for life. That's so sad. A few days later, Diane and her son provided a detailed description of her attacker and worked with a sketch artist to get a composite sketch out to the public.
Not white.
Exactly. So the drawing showed a man with dark skin, round face, buzz cut, small sunken eyes. The police now had an accurate description, but he was already back home 70 miles east back in his hometown, where the local cops still thought they were looking for a white man. So this murder, or this attempted murder, was not linked to the other crimes. Neither police departments contacted each other about this attack to link it to the series of attacks near Louisiana State University. The detectives in Diane Alexander's case probably thought the incident was just isolated. I don't know, to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they didn't know what was going on in the nearby area. I don't know, but they didn't know it was related to the Baton Rouge murders. So, of course, that means the search for the single white male serial killer continued. Diane, on the other hand, drew the connection immediately. She knew that there was attacks against women in the area. She believed her attacker was that serial killer. She tried to explain this to the police officers, but they didn't listen to her. And Diane feels that they didn't take her seriously because she was a black woman. 3 days later, July 12th, 2002, Derrick targeted a 44-year-old antique shop owner named Pam Kennemore. Pam was taking a bath before her husband got home from work, and she had accidentally left her keys in the lock of the front door, which I've done so many times.
What?
Yes.
Why?
Because I'm a fucking always busy and nuts. I'm carrying 3 things and
Oh, that's true.
dealing with the dog. But I can, I think it's not unheard of,
Yeah, no,
This is just
totally.
awful that he would stumble upon that,
And he fucking loves keys, man.
Right.
That's just
Yes.
he loves keys.
Yeah. So Derrick saw the keys. He snuck in. He silently made his way to the bathroom and he attacked her in the bathroom. He assaulted her and then abducted her from the home.
It makes me really sad because it was.
I know. I'm sorry. I know
No, it's
a
okay.
lot.
No, I'm sorry. It's just guy keeps getting away with it. It's making me.
Yes. So when Pam's husband arrived home, he found a large bloodstain on the bedroom rug. The police went on a 4-day search for Pam until her body was found by highway construction workers about 60 miles south. And it was in this area near Whiskey Bay Bridge, which is known for being really like remote, dark, and really desolate. And it's assumed, of course, that he took the body at night and put it there. Her throat had also been slashed 3 times. She had been beaten and raped before he killed her. He left DNA at the crime scene, but he was still, again, not in the system. So the detectives did not get a hit when they ran the DNA through. But again, they linked it to the other crimes.
Just adding to the serial.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they had one more that was attributed to this straight white male. So a few days later, the police announced that the same killer that attacked Pam Kennemore had also murdered Gina Green. Soon after, the police assembled a task force to try and catch this killer. Too little too late, man.
Yeah, we need like a, what's that called? Like a freelance thing of just Australian cops on
That would be
duty.
amazing. Can
Yeah.
we get some Aussie cops
Let's
just
do
to
it.
help us out? Because there's too much of this shit going
That's
on.
insane.
That is not right. So at this point, once they have this task force assembled, different agencies and detectives in different counties begin working together. Finally.
Yes.
The problem was that there were multiple serial killers working in the Baton Rouge area at the same time as Derrick.
No.
I know, this was just plagued by, it was awful.
Like same MO or like, because keys are pretty specific.
All over the place. And
Oh,
that's the other
shit.
thing is because there were, he was all over the place with his MO and there were other serial killers operating. It was just really hard to link it. So some of the evidence was kind of overlapping and throwing them off other than the DNA. If you're just going off of murder weapons or MO, like there was a few killers that were overlapping. So from 1991 to 2001, there were 53 unsolved murders of women in Baton Rouge. Kelly's literally hitting her head against the wall.
53.
Yes. So this definitely contributed to him being active for so long because there were other people out there doing the same thing. So the women all came from different backgrounds, different ethnicities. Like we said, there was different murder weapons and MOs. So it was all over the place.
That's one almost every 2 months for 10 years. If I did anything for once
Right.
every 2 months, if I just fucking took a run, someone would know about it, right? If I joined a fucking book club.
Yes. I know. It's crazy.
If I farted in the same spot once every 2 months, somebody would know me as the serial farter. Right? So you would build like
The traveling farter.
how do you not fuck up? Like how
The
does
wind woman.
like how do you not like he's had his son the lady's son walked in on him.
Mm-hmm.
So out of 53 people, how many times did you get walked in on and
Right.
no one's ever hit you. No one's ever
And the kids by the cemetery that knew that their
Yeah.
attacker was black. So I don't know.
I'm in
It's
disbelief.
just crazy to me.
no way.
Yeah. So I don't know. They were having difficulty matching specific crimes to the specific killers and kind of, they've got all these 60 plus puzzle pieces that they're trying to put together and groups of killers. And it just wasn't happening.
So another life coach tip besides bury the body is or no, don't have a body is be, vary, have variety. Like don't do the same
We're learning
thing.
a lot.
Yeah.
Just use different MOs and different murder weapons.
Mhm.
So let's see. On November 21st, 2002, 23-year-old Tranisha Danae Collum was visiting her mother's grave at a cemetery 70 miles west of Baton Rouge. Her mother had recently passed away. I believe it was within the recent couple months. And so she was at the cemetery, which she did regularly at that point. So he may have been following her.
And that's in the same place because he had gone 70 miles west before.
I can't remember which direction. I want to say it was
west.
south. Oh, it was?
No, it was west because then you said he came back east.
Yeah.
To go. Yeah.
So there's got to be something over there that maybe, he worked over there or something was going on.
Family, something linked.
So she had left the cemetery around dusk and then she never made it home. Tranisha was found 3 days later in a nearby forest. She had been raped and beaten to death. Okay.
Sorry,
just a little bit longer.
No, I got the chills. And
I know, it's just so much.
Just every time, especially even those little things where he's excessive, like slashing her throat, the other girl's three times.
Yeah.
That's...
I know.
81 stabs. And for someone who doesn't know that person and not being a crime of passion, what is your motivation if you're just a peeping? It's just...
And you found this last girl at a cemetery. You're just preying on someone that's having a really hard time. She probably was going through her grief process, wasn't fully paying attention, or, there's so much on her mind. He maybe was preying on that,
Yeah, and he's just that weird dude hanging outside a cemetery
well,
for the second
too.
time. Imagine you're just walking. You do that at a park sometimes. You're walking, you see a single person late at night.
You're like, what are you doing?
You're like, thank God I'm walking next to someone. But if at a fucking cemetery, oh man.
Creepy as shit.
Yeah.
Run.
Yeah.
So on March 3rd, 2003, he had his final victim, 26-year-old doctoral student at Louisiana State University named Carrie Lynn Yoder. She was abducted from her LSU apartment sometime between 6 p.m. and midnight. She was found again at Whiskey Bay 10 days later. But this time, he had just tossed her over a bridge near where Pam Kennemore was discovered. Instead of trying to cover up the body like he did with Pam, he just left her out in the open and just straight up tossed her over the bridge. Carrie had been beaten, raped, and strangled. Police at this point started administering thousands of DNA tests, but to Caucasian men with criminal records. No shit. So they were basically searching on areas around the murders or in the direct Baton Rouge area. So having no leads and just testing these white men, the police actually decided to allow a company named DNA Print Genomics to access the DNA that was left at the crime scenes. So the DNA print company generated an ancestry profile indicating that the suspect was 85% African, which changed the course of the investigation, of course.
It only took 10 years.
Right. So finally, police knew that they were searching for a black male. And of course, I'm envisioning Diane Alexander at home just yelling at the TV when she sees the news come on. I fucking told you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So local police reviewing the case with this new information, they thought they should test Derrick since he was a well-known criminal and had some stalking charges and, some crimes against women. His name came to mind.
Wouldn't you just, if they were peeping Tom and breaking B&Es, wouldn't you just test the number one person who's just been he's got 17 on his record and we've just let him slide. Who would want to escalate and do more crazy shit?
Not Derrick.
Not Derrick, no.
Or, how many other people did they have in the area that were doing similar things? Were there other people with these kind of peeping Tom rap sheets? That's the other thing that came to mind.
Maybe he's not the worst. Honestly, right? Baton Rouge, you said
if
there were
Derrick
other people.
Wasn't the first choice, how many other people were doing the same thing?
Who the fuck was the first choice, dude?
Yeah, fuck Baton Rouge.
Who was the single white male they pulled up and was it's definitely Billy.
Yes. Yeah, that dude is a scary motherfucker. Yeah.
Shit.
So in May 2003, a court order was obtained to collect DNA from Derrick. Finally. When detectives went to Derrick's home to collect the sample, he first told them to leave.
And they're like, you know what? Another slap on the hand. You got it.
Right.
See you later, Derrick.
Okay, man. Bye. We'll come back later. We'll just steal some of your trash like they do on these criminal shows. So eventually, of course, they talked him into complying. They told him he had to. They had the court order, blah, blah, blah. And he did it. So the officer present while Derrick was being swabbed said that his usual, like, charming personality quickly turned to being agitated and angry. After he submitted his DNA, he attempted to flee to Chicago. Immediately after the sample was given, he took his family with him and left. Once he was in Chicago for a minute, he felt like he needed to keep moving and they might catch up with him. So then he went to Atlanta.
I don't know why I forgot that he had a family. He has two families. He's in two families.
Honestly, of all this, I feel so bad for the victims, and additionally, his own family are additional victims,
Totally.
you know, and a lot of times that doesn't really get talked about too much, but his wife and children and girlfriend are out there somewhere having lived through living with this man, you know? That's just fucking terrible. So finally, on May 27th, 2003, Derrick Todd Lee was apprehended and charged with murder.
Victory
Is that your
dance,
apprehended
victory.
dance?
Ha, victory. No more Peeping Tom.
Yes. So once he was back in Baton Rouge, the survivor, Diane Alexander, was called in to pick him out of a lineup. And of course, both her and her son positively ID'd him as the attacker that night. She later said in court that she would never forget his face.
I just get chills for an hour. It's so good. I love story time. It's just fucking
Chills on
goosebumps.
chills.
Yeah.
So in total, Derrick Todd Lee committed 7 murders that were linked to him through DNA.
But 53 technically. So he only got, wait.
Well, that was from additional
10 years.
murders in the area.
Okay.
So not all of those were committed by him. That was just a statistic of unsolved that were attributed to other murders.
Okay. Got it. So 7. All right. So that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once he was apprehended, the police were heavily criticized for taking so long to catch him, especially considering his extensive criminal record, and especially the fact that that record included violence against women and stalking and Peeping Tom and that sort of shit. So the police argued in their defense that faulty eyewitness testimony was more to blame than their work.
It's their fault.
Right.
Totally.
The conscious citizen trying to help was definitely at fault here. Fucking assholes. So they even tried to blame the FBI for profiling the serial killer as white. But the FBI denied this and said they never said that the serial killer was white. They assisted in the profiling and they made statements about the killer's kind of personality or different facts about his life, but never about his race.
They just said he's not black. We didn't say he was white. We just said he's not black.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know how they thought that the FBI wouldn't be like, no.
I don't trust the FBI either. I don't trust any of those guys. They probably all fucked up and they didn't.
Yeah, maybe
no
it
one got
was.
it right.
Maybe they did say that. I don't know. But it's just kind of like they just were trying to place blame on each other, which is
Yeah.
crazy that they're having a fucking little spat like children,
Well,
you know?
Isn't that the thing where like when funds come in, if you don't do cases and stuff like that, like you do get in trouble and you get less funding and I don't know. I have no idea about that, but
Yeah.
you always want to win, right? And
Your
people
reputation, your
Mhm.
like anything. Yeah. There's a lot at stake.
they were way off in this case.
So although he was eligible for first-degree murder charges, the DA elected to try him for second-degree because Geraldine had not been sexually assaulted, which meant the first-degree conviction would be harder to get. So Derrick was convicted by jury and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. After the Geraldine DeSoto case was closed, then the DA turned their attention to trying Derrick for the murder of Charlotte Murray Pace. And that was the crime that was particularly brutal due to using the iron in the bludgeoning and the over 80 screwdriver wounds. So there was a question in this case of whether Derrick's low IQ should be a factor, but he was tested. There were, people that gave testimony from psychologists, and he was deemed fit to stand trial despite his intellectual disability. Derrick was convicted of first-degree murder for Charlotte Murray Pace, and jurors deliberated for less than 90 minutes to find him guilty. That's like barely a lunch break. He was sentenced to death for this murder by lethal injection on October 14th, 2004. So even though there were 2 murder convictions at this point, there were still other open murders that the police believed could have been linked to him. And although we have well over 50 that could be attributed to other people, there were still some that were questionable, even though there was no DNA evidence linking them to him. One of them was Mary Ann Fowler, who was abducted from a mall on Christmas Eve 2002, and her body was never found. A court declared her legally deceased in 2004, and it's believed that Derrick was responsible for her murder.
Do they consider it deceased just because it's over a certain amount of time? How does it go?
I've seen a few cases like this, and I think it's just up to the court's decision. It's not like there's a set amount of time or anything, but it's just the court has to decide if all signs point to her not coming home and there's really no sign of her.
Yeah.
They make a ruling on it. And of course, I think there's, the estate involved and what happens with her will and kids and whatnot. So
makes sense.
They think they probably pushed for a decision. There was another case we covered, one of the ones where a son murdered his parents. I don't know if you remember that. There were 2 boys and they declared the parents dead 10 years later. So I don't think there's a set amount of time or anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just more for the legality of things, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wills, trust.
Exactly.
Land.
So detectives would repeatedly ask Derrick about Mary Ann Fowler because they believed that it was him that did it. They knew that she disappeared. They asked him about the details of it. He refused to talk about it. And in fact, the detectives would say that he would get really agitated and angry when they asked about Mary Ann.
Which is what he did when he first came in. He got agitated instead of being cool and calm. And
right.
So.
Clearly, there's something there. Yeah. So there's enough circumstantial evidence to say that it's highly likely that Derrick was the killer. But again, no DNA or concrete forensics could really link him to the crime. But we know a few things. Derrick's cell phone pinged 2 cell towers in the general location of Mary Ann's disappearance at the time that she was abducted. The pickup truck that Derrick was driving at the time of her disappearance matched a pickup visible in surveillance video from the site of Mary Ann's abduction. And in fact, in this surveillance video, you can see kind of the lower half of 2 people. You can see a scuffle between 2 people from the waist down, kind of. And it's right next to a car that would match the description of his car he was driving. After Mary Ann's disappearance, police released information that she had disappeared in a maroon pickup. Days after her disappearance, Derrick sold a maroon Chevy pickup. I would think it would be easy to just track down the buyer and match the VIN number. So I don't know. I couldn't find any information about that evidence. I know that his white truck was searched and there was no DNA from her. But on the flip side, I don't know if they ever tracked down her car. So Mary Ann Fowler's 58-year-old son, John Prichette, is still overcome with anger and regretful about his last conversation with his mom. John and his mother had argued about the fact that Mary Ann was going to spend Christmas Eve with his stepfather instead of visiting relatives with him. And that was the last conversation that they had.
Oh man, don't. Don't fight with people, right? Like,
Don't do it.
don't do it. I guess, how could you see that in hindsight? I mean,
I know. John said that he harbors thoughts of wishing he could kill Derrick himself and looks forward to Derrick's death. When asked about forgiveness, John Prichette said, "I just don't see it happening. Maybe I'm wrong for that. I just got so much hate. I just don't see it happening. I could care less about him or his family or anyone else. I have no sympathy, nothing for him."
I wouldn't either.
I know. So usually I like to end on an up note, but that's just not going to happen today. But the last thing is that Derrick died of heart disease at the age of 47 on January 21st, 2016.
I thought it was gonna be like he died lethally injected into his dick, and it backfired and it swelled up and popped in his face, and then it just was the most awful death ever.
It was like a scene in Alien where it just came out and ate him. Yeah.
Yeah, just through his chest, just pounding. God, that'd be a good.
Yeah. I don't know. I wish I had some sort of upswing.
Death by alien pregnancy.
That's how he really died. That's what the autopsy said.
Oh, that's awful, man.
Yeah, he died pretty recently, 2016. But yeah, he was operating for a long time, and people just thought of him as this, he didn't mean much harm. He's just a simple guy, and he's just breaking into houses, and he got away with so much.
He's just breaking into houses.
Yes, like what the fuck? He's just stalking women.
Yeah.
Women.
Boys will be boys.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, he just can't help himself. He has a dick, so he's got to be a fucking jerk. Like, what is that kind of excuse? It's not okay.
Like watching people, I don't know. I like to people watch on the bus or something, but.
Yeah, that's different though. You're not standing in someone's window jerking off furiously.
I'm not.
I'm not that I know of yet, unless it's that consensual thing where you look through my window.
Just your window, yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, I know that this story was very thinly linked to university just by the area and a couple of the victims, not all of them. But it's just such a compelling case, and I just feel for these women that suffered so unnecessarily because the police couldn't link him, It just breaks my heart that he was allowed to stay on the streets for so long and hurt so many people and their families and all these survivors,
Actually, I want to say the cops maybe were overwhelmed because you're saying there were other serial killers in the area, and
because there were over 50 unsolved cases, I know that added the pressure of not knowing where to link all of them together. Yeah. I get that. But then the other half of me is just like, well, it's not like when you're overwhelmed at another job. You know what I mean? If you work at a kitchen and there's too much to do, then it takes people a couple extra minutes to get their food. If you work in an office and this paperwork doesn't get to the right person, that's fucking different. People are dying.
The consequences are different. And
that's just not okay.
I mean, it just sucks that DNA was it's still new at that time too.
Yeah, still kind of new, but also I just don't understand. It was sort of in its infancy still. However, it had still been around long enough to where if he was convicted and held more accountable for some of these crimes that he did, instead of getting probation, slaps on the wrist, house arrest, things like that, if people took those crimes more seriously and put his DNA in the system, he would have been linked to these other crimes.
For preventative measures.
I mean, really, he had been.
Tom should.
Yeah, well.
Oh, not just criminals, even.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, I do think that if you're stalking women.
Totally.
You absolutely should put your DNA in the system.
Because your DNA might end up on someone's couch or some shit. You might jerk off onto someone. We might need to link you to it, right?
Honestly, yes. Like, I just don't understand how that was not required of him. I really don't understand. And again, he just kept getting these slaps on the wrist. So it's like, okay, probation here, a year there, but none of this was taken seriously enough to put his DNA in the system.
I honestly it would have made more sense to me because you get that white privilege thing where it's like a white man would have been a hand slapped on the thing. Honestly, it's crazy that it's like it's not backwards, but you see what I'm saying? Usually, it's just a faulty system instead of just racism. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that, I can understand them letting it go because that shit happens all the time, and that's something that we're used to. We hear that story all the time. But
things just slip through the cracks.
Exactly.
People, an entire person slipped through the cracks on this one.
Just because he had a lower IQ and was seemed as harmless, that just shows your view on what stalking women is. That's what kind of victimless crime it kind of is.
Honestly, that's one of the hugest things that's striking to me is just like, oh, well, he's just following women. It's not that big of a deal.
Like,
it's a huge fucking deal. You do not violate a woman's privacy and her space. It is unfucking acceptable. Your DNA should be in the system. We should link you to any fucking crime and any motherfucking thing you touch.
Anyone, girls or guys, man, she could be leaving snail trails everywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, of course, on both sides of, or, you know, all sides of the gender like spectrum. However, it just shows such a lack of concern for crimes against women.
Totally.
You know, and so there's this racial element to it. There's this, you know, not taking women as seriously. Then there's Diane Alexander, who's a Black woman, who's like, well, they don't take me seriously. Additionally, because I'm Black and female.
There's the racism and the female. Yeah, it's all mixed in together. Like,
fucked up. Yeah.
This is a good story. This is really good.
Exactly.
You did a
so
great
I'm like,
time.
I know that the connection to universities is thin, but it just meant so much to me once I like started thinking about this case that it was just like, yeah, it's a fucking university murder. I don't care. Like, yeah, it's just it's one of those, I feel like the cases that are quote unquote my favorite are the ones that make me the most angry.
Yeah, of course.
Like, the ones that are just like, God fucking damn it. Like, how did he do that for so long? Are the ones that I'm just like, yeah, this is very memorable to me. This sticks with me. I have to fit this in for one of our letters, you know? So that's Derrick Todd Lee. I'm like, the university, let's do some Derrick Todd Lee.
Fucking Derrick.
Yeah. So that's been You Part 1.
You Part 2.
That's what I said. Did I really forget that we did I do that all the time. Someone asked me about a case yesterday and I was just like, drew a total blank. I feel like people think that because I know so many details during the recording, that shit doesn't disappear immediately after the record button is pushed.
You asked me, like, it was two brothers and there was a case? I'm like, totally.
I seriously don't remember so many things. Oh man, drugs are bad, okay?
I think it's like the fire and the smoke and we're just like all discombobulated.
Oh man, these California fires are fucking our brains up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't breathe, I can't sleep, and I can't remember things about murders. I'm just going to blame it on the fires. So that's going to be it for University Part 2, like I said. And we just wanted to remind you one more time that there's a few things in our description and show notes. There's always going to be the link to our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, so you can follow us on there for updates about episodes and links to our merch and memes and all sorts of interesting crime facts. Then also there's going to be links to resources for victims. So anything related to domestic violence or mental health care and 12-step meetings I put in there. There's a bunch of links if you need resources. And there's links to some of the research materials used for tonight if you want to do further reading. And it's too late now, but we like to remind you that there's timestamps because this was a particularly brutal episode. So there's going to be timestamps every week if you want to skip over those parts that were a little bit hard to listen to. So look out for those timestamps.
Are there any pictures of him in all cowboy gear? I
have not found any yet.
Damn it.
But just knowing it, I get to picture it myself.
Cool.
So a couple of the last things that are in the show notes are going to be a link to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/murderdictionary. You can go there to get access to bonus episodes and a couple small merch items and things like that. And a link to our Threadless, which is going to be threadless.murderdictionary.thread. You know, every time I forget this one.
It's there.
There's links fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
Our show notes, there's links on our social media. It's Threadless and Murder Dictionary. Also, Google works really well.
That's all I do, just two
so if you
words
just put
together.
all those words together, that's what I do every fucking time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Just don't do
Google
threadless murder.
No.
That might be kind of weird.
You're going to get some fucked up results from there. And you'll probably be put on some lists.
Totally.
So once again, we wanted to thank our Patreon supporters that were new for this week. Fiona, Nicole,
Amanda, right?
Amanda, Jamie,
Jaime, Jamie,
and Janelle.
No, there was another one too. Wait, Janelle's longer. What was the Janelle?
Oh, I said Jaleel White just because I'm making fun.
Oh, wait.
He was Urkel, Jaleel White. You didn't. Why do I know weird celebrity names? Who knows that? Jaleel White was Urkel.
I'm sorry. I aged myself or you aged yourself? Which one?
I don't know. It's probably both.
Yeah, no. Okay. That went over my head. I was like, yeah, shout out to Jaleel, our fucking number one.
I'm sorry, Janelle. I shouldn't make fun of your name. You're probably a million times hotter than Jaleel White.
Oh, totally. Yeah, Janelle. I like that name. Thank you guys. Thank you for keeping us off the streets.
Thank you so much for your Patreon support.
Yeah, that's so fucking cool. Every time. I can't believe there's even one name every time.
Know,
and then
every
you shout
time
out
you're like,
5.
What?
It's
You're
like,
still going?
It's insane. That's so cool.
So I think that's pretty much it for this week. Next week, we'll be back for University Part 3. I'm not going to fuck it up. Part 3, right?
Part 2. I'm excited. It should be fun, right? Or something?
You shouldn't have to question that.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it so motherfucking fun.
I'm excited. Yes.
So you ready to sign off and true crime and chill? Maybe? Look, if you don't want to true crime and chill with me, I'll just go true crime and chill by
don't
myself.
cry. Don't get all emotional, lady.
Is that making your dick soft?
A little bit.
Sorry, broski.
I'll be Big Spoon this time.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. I'm in.
Let's do it.
Bye.
Bye.
Buckle up, because Metro is bringing you the best deal in wireless. Switch to Metro and get your choice of 2 awesome free phones from top brands like Samsung and LG with huge HD screens and tons of memory for all your pics and videos. So hurry into Metro and get your awesome free phones only at Metro. Plus sales tax and activation fee. Requires port-in of eligible number not currently active on T-Mobile network or active on Metro in past 90 days. Limit 4 per account or household. Restrictions apply. See store for details and terms and conditions.
And now, an ad from Dad.
All right, save money on car insurance when you bundle home and auto with Progressive. Can I take these off? All right. What is this? This looks good. Wow, that's well made. Where did you get this? I'm talking to you with the hair. Yeah, where did you get this? It's good stuff. That's solid. That's not veneer, that's solid stuff.
Progressive